All right, I guess everyone wants to go to bed at some point, don't they? But how could we go to bed after that one? Evgeni Malkin with a net front redirection of all places to score the game-winning goal in the third overtime at Madison Square Garden. The Penguins, as you see right below me, 4-3 winners in sudden death against the New York Rangers. I might be a little bit quieter right now because my older son Lucas is asleep just above my head, and it's much later than I'm usually doing these shows. So here I am, and like I was saying, like we were going to go to sleep anytime in the next hour or so. So, not that I'm going to stay on for that long, but I have to talk about this one. One of the most memorable games that I've seen. I'm 37 years old, been following the Penguins since the mid 90s, and this one is right up there in the top five for me, honestly, in a lot of ways. Number one, for the length of game, the fourth longest game in Penguins history, only behind Peter Sikora's overtime winner against the Red Wings. Also, Matt Carkner beat the Penguins for the Senators in 2010, a game I'd forgotten about until I saw Bob Grove's tweet. Of course, Bob would remind me of that one. And then, of course, Peter Nedved, and Keith Primo. So this was the fifth or fourth longest game. I'm actually not entirely sure if this passed the Matt Carkner game, if you will. The most ever minutes played by Sidney Crosby. He and that top line were dominant. They were key in a comeback after a first period that was about as depressing as you could imagine. I mean, it looked like it was going to be a sweep, honestly. I hate to just jump to conclusions after 20 minutes of play, but all the doom and gloom, I think, from folks predicting this series and saying that the Rangers were going to have an easy time of it. Well, it looked like it was going to be an easy time for the Rangers, but I think they burned through their adrenaline a little too quickly. They got sloppy, they got a little slower, and the Penguins picked up the pace. And or maybe they were just at the same pace the whole time, and the Rangers just fell off the wagon a little bit there. But either way, it was Crosby, it was Gensel connecting for the first two Penguins goals of the game to tie it 2-2 in the second period. And Brian Rust looks to the heavens after he scores a key 5-on-3 power play goal off a pass from Malkin late in the second to tie it up 3-3. And little did we know we wouldn't see any more goals for more than 3 periods after that. And this is interactive hockey talk, and most of you are realizing that right now. You're on the live chat. My name is Matt Gajtka, by the way. That's my name in the top corner of the screen. And this is Pittsburgh Postgame on Pittsburgh Sports Live. Steele Dictate says, what a game, an absolute bloodbath. I wonder about Ricard Raquel and Casey DeSmith, 2 players who left the game due to injury. It almost seems like they got off easy. Just being flippant about that. I apologize to Ricard Raquel because that was a tough hit he took from, who was it, Lindgren, I believe, on the side wall. Ended up just being a minor penalty, but Raquel looked like he was concussed, or at least was unconscious for a little bit there way back in the first period. Like I said, it was dark for the Penguins early in this one, and they turned it around. 25 shots, setting a franchise record for most shots in a playoff period. Raise your hand if you had the Penguins doing that after that first period where they looked outclassed in just about every way. And I don't want to also belittle what Casey DeSmith did. Yes, Louis Domingue is going to get the headlines for coming in and playing, 2 games this year and playing the most important minutes of the season so far in double and triple overtime. And looking, for the most part, pretty solid despite warming up at 6:45, seeing his last puck at that point in the warm-up, and then going until almost 11 o'clock, I think it was, when he entered the game. So, Domingue, big-time respect there, but also Casey DeSmith. He did more than enough. As I tweeted during the game, I think DeSmith's done enough. Time for the Penguins to get him a win. They didn't get him a win, but they got themselves a win. John Marino's point shot, and Evgeni Malkin, like I said, net front presence. When did we ever see that? You can tell it was desperate times there. Gino thinking, I got to go to the goal and make something happen, and he did. What a deft little tip in front of the net against his fellow countryman Igor Shesterkin, who made 79 saves, setting a Rangers record. That might have been an NHL record. I'm actually not sure. I know it was more than Ron Tugnut made in that game against the Flyers, 5 OTs back in 2000. So I haven't had a chance to really dig into the numbers here. I'm sure the stats will be flying out, the fun facts from this one, and a lot more fun for Penguins fans and for the Penguins as a team who have played now 4 consecutive game ones in the playoffs and needed overtime in each of those games. And for the first time, thankfully, finally, they win one of those games. It was a loss against the Islanders, a loss against the Canadiens, a loss against the Islanders, and a win against the Rangers here, those 4 consecutive playoff opening overtime games. I don't want to say they got over the hump. It's just one win. You need 4, as we all know. As Badger Bob Johnson once reminded us when the Penguins were down on a series at one time in 1991, that fateful spring. But this one feels a little bit more than one win, does it not? And hey, let's just enjoy it right now. So I'm going to read some of your comments here. NES Addict says, I was going to be so deflated if they lost that one. Yeah, I went through several emotions in the overtimes because, as I said in the third period, as I tweeted this, you can find me on Twitter, by the way, at Matt Gajtka, at that handle at the top of the screen. But it felt like found money considering how poorly the Penguins looked in the first period. And they were ready to hand Ryan Reeves the Conn Smythe Trophy after he was running around banging bodies. And yeah, he played well. But let's be honest here, folks. He's a fourth-line player. And the Rangers have a good fourth line, a solid one. But they have a lot of inexperience as well. And I wonder, that second period, they let things get away from them. The Penguins, give them full credit, of course. Maybe that was when the experience kicked in. Maybe it was just the natural ebb and flow of a hockey game. You're down 2 goals. You wake up a little bit more than you were already if you weren't already ready to go. And it didn't look like the Penguins were in that first period. But either way, the Penguins showed that this series is probably going to be close to a coin flip. I thought it was a coin flip series coming in. The Penguins, I still think, are overall better at 5-on-5, even though the Rangers played better late in the season. The Rangers have the better power play. The Penguins have the better penalty kill. The Rangers have, obviously, a great goalie. We saw what Shesterkin did tonight. Maybe one of those goals had some odor on it, but that's about it. And it's Jake Gensel taking the shot on that second goal. So I'm not going to pin any of those on Shesterkin. I thought his defending in front of him wasn't very good, actually. And interesting that it looked a lot more like the Rangers team that we saw in the first 50-odd games of the season before they got it going defensively. They look like a team that gives up a lot, leans on their goalie, and tries to make it work with their high-octane offensive players. And, hey, it almost worked tonight, but it didn't. And almost doesn't count, as Brandy once sang. Speaking of following hockey since the 90s, that's a 90s reference for those of you out there. All right, more comments. Steel Dictate says, I'll take a split in NY any day. Peter Nedved had a long one, too, says NES Addict. Yes, 4 overtime win for Peter Nedved. That one went well past midnight. This one ended, about 10 minutes before midnight, so they let us off easy this time, I suppose. Walt Flanagan, there he is, with a positive comment. Holy crap. Boy, oh boy, I was glad to be very, very wrong about this one. Hey, man, I was just as negative as you were. The only saving grace for me was that I was able to get my kids ready for bed in that first period. It's just single father Matt this week with my wife out of town in Atlanta. So I was at first a little perturbed that I wasn't going to be able to devote my full attention to the game. But then once that first period got going, I was thinking maybe I'm going to want to ignore this one and for the most part just ride it out with the kids in tow. But younger one went to bed at 8. Older one went to bed at 9. And I got about 3 hours of nonstop hockey watching. That's my longest stretch of the year tonight. 86 shots, it says here on the box score. Interesting. I thought it was 83. Anyway, other comments. Steel Dictate continues. He's fired up. Good to see you. You're a new face on the post-game shows. Good team to go up 1-0 too. Much needed. A split in New York at the least. 100% take it. Blaze Melandra asks, think Raquel is out for Game 2? Hope not. Well, considering he was hit high, he looked like he was out on his feet for a second, and he didn't return to the game, obviously, as we well know. I don't think he's back for Game 2. Maybe Game 3. Concussions are a weird thing if he did, in fact, sustain one. So, tough to say, but, I mean, you saw it tonight. The Penguins' first line did heroic work. At one point, going into the third OT, they had outchanced the Rangers when they were on the ice 17-2. So, crazy numbers. Just a virtuoso performance from Crosby and Gensel and Rust. And great to see Rust get going, even though it took a 5-on-3 power play to get him to put one in. He hit the post in overtime. So did Jake Gensel. This line could have produced even more than they did. But I'm also happy that it was Malkin who scored the goal. And it was a guy like John Marino throwing a shot through to the front because Marino got pounded in that first period. I thought he had a concussion the way he reacted to the hit that, I don't know if it was Reeves or the second one that he took. It was Lafreniere even throwing the body around uncharacteristically. But Marino last to the end. And I think guys like Marino, Pettersson, they held their level through the overtimes remarkably well. Mike Matheson, Chris Letang, we know they're good, especially Letang, ends up playing nearly 50 minutes in this game. He might be the most fit athlete we've ever seen in Pittsburgh sports. I know that sounds a little sacrilegious, but that's the way I feel about it right now. I think he's just an incredible specimen, and the Penguins are fortunate to have him. They're going to need him to recover from this one for Game 2, but for the Rangers, it's going to be a little bit harder to recover, especially for their goaltender. I know he's young, and he's not necessarily skating, but 100-plus shot attempts for the Penguins, that's up and down out of the butterfly over and over again for Shesterkin. And so that's why you want to win these games. Duh, no rocket science there. But I think back to the opening game of the playoffs 2 years ago, Tampa Bay Lightning playing a nemesis team of theirs at the time. The Columbus Blue Jackets, 5 overtimes before Braden Point wins it. And I'm not sure if that was a sweep, but they went on to a pretty routine win in the first round. These Penguins are not those Lightning, but these emotional pivot points in the playoffs, you kind of feel them coming, especially when overtimes go this late. And like I said, I believe at least the 5th longest game in Penguins history, maybe even the 4th. So this was one that was probably going to turn the series one way or the other. And I don't want to say the Penguins won the series there, but they have ensured that, I think, they have ensured this is going to be a real battle. Despite a lot of people in the league and a lot of you out there were thinking that it was going to be the Rangers heavily favored, or at least slightly favored. All right, Rob78, says, thoughts on Kapanen. Played a great game, in my opinion, after the first couple of periods. And one of the guys that it looked like he showed off his conditioning. Speaking of Letang and being well-conditioned, Kapanen, Brock McGinn, too. A lot of legs. I'm still disappointed in Jeff Carter. I don't feel like he's carrying his weight. But Kapanen probably should have had a goal or two. He had a brilliant chance late in the second OT off that face-off play the Penguins pulled off. And just Shesterkin made a nice arm save on it. But Kapanen was wiring pucks, and the Penguins as a team kept it simple tonight. And Kapanen was one of those people who wasn't pulling up and looking for a trailer. Sorry, he was just trying to get pucks to the front of the net. And it eventually worked out. They funneled pucks to the front. They got 83 shots through 5 periods and change, and they get the win, 4-3 in overtime. Ken Will asks times in before midnight. It's a great question. I feel like overtimes go faster these days. I know there's no commercials, and there has never been commercials in overtime as far as I could tell. Just thinking back to my 25 years. So it looks like we're having some trouble with the stream right now. I'm not sure what's going on. It should be my connection looks good to me. So interesting. Sorry if I'm jumping around here and if it's not the best quality. But I think, what was I saying? The Kapanen situation tonight, he's never going to be the player that we want him to be. Let's just put it that way. But maybe a game like tonight can give him a little bit of confidence and give him an idea that, yeah, it's a lot better when I play simple. And he did that a lot last year, teaming up with Malkin. So interesting to see him start to shine more and more as the overtimes went along. Same with Evan Rodriguez. And like I said, Brock McGinn impressed me, too, with his legs. Deep into this game, and pretty terrific stuff. Jeff Candlemo, hello Jeff, says, have you ever seen a goalie take themselves out like what happened with DeSmith? Yeah, I didn't see anything terribly wrong with him. I thought he was going off to get a drink or fix equipment midway through the second overtime, and it turns out apparently an injury. I was thinking maybe some gastrointestinal distress. Hate to laugh, that would be terrible, but we've seen it before. Roberto Luongo, way back when, in an overtime playoff game, had to take himself off to go use the bathroom. But this was not the case here. Emily Kaplan for ESPN reporting on the sideline that it was an injury for sure. And obviously it was, or else DeSmith would have come back in. But Louis Domingue gets the final, period and a half or so? Maybe a full period of play when it's all totaled up. And, hey, look, he was fine. The Rangers peppered him. They tried to get shots from all angles. Maybe that actually helped him warm up. Who knows? Sometimes that can backfire against a goalie who comes in cold. And could have been the case here. But, yeah, let's think about long-term because we're still waiting for Tristan Jarry to come back. And no offense to Louis Domingue, but he's journeyman is a kind word, I think, to describe his career. He's been up and down between the NHL and the AHL. And, yeah, he's hung around, but he's probably like a 900 save percentage skill goalie. When you had Casey DeSmith, who's probably about a 910, I would say. in there. And DeSmith fended, I think, well. I don't like how he tracked the puck on the first goal from Adam Fox, drifted it through a crowd. I thought he should have been able to at least pick that one up, but hey, that's why I'm sitting at home, I suppose. Sometimes our perspectives can be wrong. However, DeSmith was more than good enough to give you some confidence, I think, that he could help you get through the first round if you needed him to. But now, who knows, right? And it's just one day off, unfortunately. Between games, I think it's the whole way through the series. It's just one day off. So on, off, as you would imagine. We've already gone into May here for the start of the playoffs. So they're going to try to get these series in as fast as they can. New York Jagoffs, says JV. I got to give the New York crowd one bit of credit here. They were rabid at the start of this game, and I was amused, as was the ESPN broadcasting crew, by the Bronx cheers. Hey, we are New York, right? It was Manhattan, wrong borough, but same concept. The cheers for the icings after there was one icing in the third period that was kind of questionable that they gave the Penguins, and well, the crowd didn't let the Lions people forget that. So that was amusing, and I'll never say the Rangers fans aren't good hockey fans because they seem very passionate and reminded me of some of those old wars from 2008 in the playoffs against them, 2014. That one was bitter, was it not? All the way to the end. Very bitter for Penguins fans. 2015, kind of short, but and then 2016, glorious for Pittsburgh. JV says either goalie can start next game. I don't care. I do care. Again, I just feel like Domingue might have caught a little something in the bottle tonight, but not the kind of goalie you want to have in for a playoff game. But if DeSmith is out, then you got to go down to Wilkes-Barre Scranton again and try to find a fourth goaltender. So things that the Penguins can worry about tomorrow and things that Ron Hextall can worry about tomorrow, I suppose. Dan B says, what an unreal game. Winning that has to do some wonders for this team and their confidence. So happy for them. That's my primary emotion, is just joy for the players. It's been a while since they won a playoff overtime game. And Bob Grove, again, there's that man. Follow him, please. Bob Grove 91 on Twitter. He tweeted earlier before the game started that the Penguins had dropped 5 overtime games in a row. Prior to that stretch of overtime games that they had actually done decent in. When they won the 2 cups, they went, I want to say 5-4 in overtime over those 2 seasons, pardon. But prior to that, they had lost 8 consecutive overtime games. So this Malkin, Crosby, Letang era has left a lot on the table in playoff overtime. So maybe the scales are starting to tip a little bit. So this one feels bigger than just one game, doesn't it? And at least they can say that they didn't go out with 4 consecutive playoff opening overtime losses. Talk about demoralizing, just based on the history of some of these players. I know there's a lot of new players on the team compared to even 2 years ago. But still, the core players they've seen a lot, and they're human like all of us, even though they've won big. They've gotten to the mountaintop 3 times, but they've had their share of disappointment. It's not like this has been a charmed playoff life for Crosby and Malkin and Letang. They've had to go through some bitter defeats, which usually happens in hockey, right? If you're in there, if you're in it, you're going to get your heart broken quite a bit. But it feels like they've had their hearts broken more than they deserve, perhaps, in some of these scenarios. So, hey, they got one back tonight. It was pretty satisfying to watch the boys pour off the bench, coaches celebrating. It's playoff overtime. I don't know about you, but I got that playoff flush in the first period with the Rangers strutting their stuff. You felt like, what are the Penguins going to have here as a response? And boy, did they ever have a response. Andrew Kopp scores to make it 2-0 early in the second. And then it was just territorial play. It wasn't rush stuff. It wasn't necessarily the Rangers making a lot of mistakes. It was the Penguins putting on their work boots, as Phil Bourque would say, and digging in the offensive zone. The cycle game was working. The Penguins got, of course, the second goal off a rush chance. It's just a 2-man game with Crosby and Gensel. My good friend Greg Revac, a former guest on this show, highlighted how they made that happen on the 2-on-2 on Twitter. Again, look for him, Revac, R-E-V-A-K. Steeler Nation 412 says, full of impactful moments. Yeah, I'm trying to look back and remember all these moments because sometimes I just have to go back through the Twitter account and see what the heck I even said. Right now, I've asked folks on Twitter where this one ranks for memorable Penguins games all time. Oh, and by the way, here's an update from Taylor Haas, Penguins reporter. She says Mike Sullivan has reported Ricard Raquel is being evaluated, and Casey DeSmith has a lower body injury, but no, obviously, updates on their availability. It's the playoffs. You're not going to get it anyway. So the Penguins get over 80 shots tonight, and it was kind of amazing because for a while it was just a one-line effort. Still looking for more from Jeff Carter. Can he make one play? Did he make one play today? Just makes it hard to get things done when you are leaning so much on one line. And, eventually, I think the fourth line did okay in at least keeping the puck in the offensive zone at times. And you saw guys like, for instance, like I was talking about, Kapanen came on later in the game. Evan Rodriguez came on later in the game. McGinn. But it still wasn't quite enough from Malkin and Heinen and Kapanen, I didn't think, for the longest time. Eventually they got there. But it's not a one-line team right now, but it felt like a 1.5-line team for a long time tonight. Pittsburgh Sports all the time. Good to see you again. You ask, do you believe that a win like that can completely demoralize the New York Rangers and pretty much win the series? Demoralize, yes. Win the series, no. Just because the Rangers are going to have another chance to play in front of their home crowd on Thursday and redeem themselves. They have a lot of lessons to learn. They know they didn't play a perfect game. But this is also a young team. I think they're going to warm to the task here, but they also have their limits. And the Rangers lost a defenseman in the third period as well. So even though the Penguins suffered through some attrition tonight, so did the Rangers. And I think that their top guys, their top guns are dangerous, plenty dangerous. Panarin, Zibanejad, Kreider, terrifying players. And Capo Kakko and Philip Keedle could have very easily created the winning goal tonight, if not for what I believe was a correct goaltender interference call. But they're kids still. That kid line for New York, they're getting a lot of ice time. And, they're being tested right now in the heat of the playoffs. And I guess it was some good, some bad for them. And you could say bad break on the disallowed goal. But like I said, I think that was the right call. It looked like Capo was just a little bit in too deep to reasonably be able to avoid Casey DeSmith. Maybe that's when he got hurt, actually, thinking about it. Maybe that was a tweak at that point and some motion he made in overtime or started to cramp up a little bit. Who knows? But they're saying lower body injury for Casey DeSmith. JV asks, does Ricard Raquel have playoff experience? He was admiring his pass and got popped. Yeah, he would probably tell you that he needs to show better awareness there. I think he's played a little bit in the playoffs for the Ducks. They made it a couple of years ago. Did they not? But not a ton. It's not like some of the players on this team. Walt Flanagan asks about Kapanen and how can he continue to get a sweater going forward. I thought he showed enough tonight. I just don't think – I see a lot of folks asking for Drew O'Connor, including Walt, but what's Drew O'Connor ever done? I don't know. At least Kasperi Kapanen has put some goals on the net at the NHL level, and the Penguins need some support scoring, and they still really didn't get it tonight. Honestly, they really didn't. It was the big guns, and in the end it was Malkin deflecting that puck. So to win the game, and Malkin at least rose to the occasion late, but even his line certainly, and his effort certainly is not beyond reproach here. But the Penguins get the win, 4-3, and trying to make sure I mention all the folks who came in and left a comment here on the live blog. Raider21 says, Louis came through. Folks were sharing Louis Domingue cooking tweets. Yes, he's quite the cook, it turns out. So he cooked up quite the performance here tonight. I'm not ashamed to use a terrible pun like that because, quite frankly, it's past midnight. I'm a little delirious. I've done some of these shows after Penguins overtime losses, so you have to forgive me if I'm not in my right mind right now. It just feels unreal at times because for a while it felt like the Penguins were never going to win one of these tight games again. It seems ridiculous to say that, but hey, times change, players get older, players change, circumstances change. But at least in this case, the one good change is that the Penguins finally have a 1-game-to-none lead in a playoff series. It has been a while. It has been since that first-round series against the Philadelphia Flyers in 2018, in fact, since they opened the playoffs with a win. That was a blowout win. This one required every drop of blood and sweat, and maybe a couple of happy tears shed as well when that puck went in behind Igor Shesterkin. We'll see how Shesterkin bounces back from that performance. We'll see how the Penguins bounce back from that performance. All I know is I'd rather be them than the guys in that home locker room tonight. Okay, thanks for watching. I apologize for the shoddy connection. I'm going to call it a night. It's 12:24. Let's get our rest and take a maintenance day tomorrow if you have to. And I'll see you after Game 2. This is Pittsburgh Postgame on Pittsburgh Sports Live. Like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you on Thursday night, hopefully not Friday morning. Bye-bye.